Hi, everyone. Welcome to another SDEC session. My name is Adam Greco, and I'm with Search Discovery. Today's session is going to be in our area of CDPs. For those of you who are new to the SDEC, we are a free weekly educational group covering topics related to digital marketing and digital analytics. I'll be putting some information in the chat if you want to formally join the SDEC. And one of the benefits of joining is you get invites to these directly to your inbox, and you can join our Slack group where we have about 50 past recordings of SDEC sessions. If you have any technical questions, please ping me in the chat. If you have questions for our presenter, please use the Zoom Q&A and we will get to those questions at the end. So that's it. We're going to get started. So I'll hand it off to you. And I know I'm going to butcher your name, but I don't know if you say Maciek or how do you, I'll let you say the right way to say it.
It actually is Maciek, and I know that it's complicated for everyone. So,
cool. Well, thank you so much for presenting and take it away.
Yes, thanks, Adam. It's great to be here. So yeah, basically, as told before, my name is Maciek, and that's me on this picture. It's totally hidden. So I have worked in digital analytics and everything around basically for the last 10 years. And most recently, I have found my own company called Diffuse Data, where we do basically everything around digital data analytics and activation. But I have also recently worked as a marketing technologist at CCP Games. So if there are any online players, let me know and raise your hand up, and we can do something cool about that. Then I have had also a couple of marketing automation or CRO roles in the past, and also pure implementation and analytics roles as well. So as you can guess, I like playing with data and tech quite a lot. So let me start with the statement that should be no surprise to anyone. Basically, marketing technology is a mess. And the only good side of that is that ad tech is an even bigger one. Now you can laugh. Yeah, but basically, if we take a look at any kind of those marketing technology landscape charts, like a total honest mess. There are so many solutions right there on the market. And as digital marketer or digital analysts or market people or marketing automation people, we are supposed to know most of them. And we are also supposed to connect all of them and making sure that everything works as expected and that we can achieve our business goals, basically. So why would you pick a CDP as another brick into this castle of your whole MarTech stack? So I'm sure that everyone of you here has at least once had a goal to create a big picture digital solution that help leading companies deliver transformational digital brand experiences. I think we've all been there, but yeah, it's pretty much impossible, right? And CDP will not really solve it for you. So let's take a look first at how the technology landscape really looks. So if we look at Gartner's market guide for a customer data platform for last year, we can see that they identify a couple of different let's say, types of CDPs, and they base them based on whether they are focusing more on execution, so data activation, or data management, and whether they are IT managed or marketer managed. To be honest, I don't really agree with this approach here, because I think that every CDP implementation product is a joint effort. So I think that instead of that breakdown, we can use another one like this. And basically, I think that what kind of CDP do you need? Uh, Depends on how big is your organization and how mature your data is and your data usage is in your company. So basically, Gartner has identified like 4 different types of CDPs. So we've got the marketing clouds, and basically what Salesforce or Adobe or Oracle offers, that they have a piece of every kind of marketing technology tool that you can combine, but then they have came out to the conclusion that it's not really solving the problem, because it's still really hard to synchronize data between those, and that's why Adobe has recently implemented the Experience platform, and Oracle is also pushing their own CDP, and Salesforce, being Salesforce, kind of tries to move into that direction as well. Then we have the smart hubs, and smart hubs are basically like CDPs and marketing automation, those combined into one. So that would be something like Cinerize or Lytics or Eloqua, for example. So basically a tool that enables you to integrate some data to track something, but then um, they also have some extra marketing automation capabilities built in. So basically to send emails or to do product recommendations and stuff like that. And those are usually kind of cool where you have a small company or a medium-sized company, but you don't really have a big data team. And it's likely data integration is not like the core of your business. Then we have an option just of a custom solution. So that basically means that we can build something by ourselves, and we will get to this point on the later stage. And then in the very center, so I think that it's for like medium to big size companies with like medium to okayish data maturity. We have this marketing data integration CDPs, which kind of is I think that most of the people, when they think about CDP, that's what a CDP is. And this is also where probably there is the biggest competition, and also where it makes the most sense to talk about CDPs. But well, what a marketing data integration CDP really is then? So in my eyes, it's like a tool to ingest incoming data streams, create user segments, and synchronize both of them with other analytics and activation channels as well. So basically, if we take a look at the technology stack, that would be, I mean, like at the technology setup that we would be looking at in this case, we can have multiple different data sources where we integrate the data into our CDP. So it can be the website, it can be the mobile app, it can be some external API, it can be a database or a bunch of CSV files linked somewhere, or it can be our IoT devices. We are, for example, working now for a company that does air purifiers, and into their CDP setup, they are ingesting data from their air purifiers, saying how big, I mean, how much time does an air filter that's a part of the purifier has left, meaning that when the time has come to get a new purifier, I mean, to get a new filter for your purifier, then what they can do with the CDP is to kind of create an audience of the users who have like the last 10% of their filter's lifetime, for example, and then integrate it with all the marketing channels from one place. So that's exactly the case whereas CDP could be a very good solution, and we can actually use this example to discuss the next steps as well. So basically, then, quite a big point for any of those data points is to have a common data schema. Because otherwise, if your events are named differently, if your user attributes are named differently across different channels, etc., then it's of course very hard to manage them properly. So having a common data schema and the solution to kind of enforce the data schema, do some checks on the fly, whether the events are incoming with all the required parameters, etc., etc., is a very important step. Then moving down, we have the event ingestion layer. So basically an API that can receive all your different events from all those data sources. And it's very often connected bidirectionally to the user profile data. So basically, with every incoming event, a user profile is built and updated in that case. And it can be a very handy solution to do stuff in real time, of course. And very often there's also a way to get your user profile data into events, for example, for analytics, etc. So you don't have to set up any kind of external data sources for your analytics setup then. It's kind of cool. Then we have this event enrichment logic, which basically, yes, that defines that, okay, if this user has an ID of 1 to 3 and we have an event of purchase them, then update the user's lifetime to have the new transaction included into that, and then to return the data back into the event and into, for example, our event-based connector, which in our case could be Adobe Analytics or Google Analytics or Mailchimp, or basically anything that supports like event-based data input. And then we also have this another flow for user profile. So basically, whenever an event is coming, as I was saying, a user profile can be created and, let's say, updated. And then whenever we define the audience or a segment of the users that we want to take a look at, very often this audience or segment will be also updated in real time. So whenever we have a user update, then we can check for if the conditions to match to include the user in our audience match. So for example, the audience of the users who had, let's say, transactions in the last 30 days or something like that. And then we can ingest those data, so audience data, into separate into a third-party tool, like an email marketing tool or remarketing tools. For example, we can use it to sync with our Google Ads or Facebook Ads setup or Salesforce or pretty much anything that we have there. But quite an important case is that the audience-based connectors are very often based on the email address hashes, because that's also something that most of those APIs are based on. And that means that we can, of course, have to specify our user ID, setup in the proper way, so it's actually compatible with all the tools that we might want to include there. And I think that this point brings us quite well to the life hack section, because I think that all of us, when we think about investing in a CDP and making our data greater again, we should focus on getting it properly done and not like in this expectation and reality case. So what should we do? What should we do if we want to build a Sydney opera of CDPs? Yes, those are actually quite hard for me to share, because I learned all of it the hard way. Um, but basically, I would like you to remember those four very important points. First of all, please be sure to start with use cases. So it's very important first to identify your use cases and set your requirements around them and not the other way. Because otherwise, when you let's say that, yes, I want a CDP and then I will decide what I want to do with it, it's very easy to get overwhelmed by all the options that we have and to kind of grow that into an impossible product. So start with use cases first. Then please remember that CDP is a team play. That means that you need to have all the stakeholders in your organization on board, because very often those data activation products are very multi-departmental. So you need someone from the data team, you need someone from the digital analytics team, you need someone from the mobile team, you need someone from the IT, you need somebody from marketing, etc., etc. And if you skip that, then it might be too late to actually convince the stakeholders to give you all the resources that you need. So it's very important to treat it as a team play from the very beginning. Then also don't trust the vendors with what they say they provide. I mean, maybe like trust but check. That's the nice way to put it in. So basically, when you specify your requirements, please make sure to go by each of them and really verify if what vendor says is possible, it actually is possible. That might require quite a bit more work. There may be some external resources to do so. But in the end, the return on investment of that is great because it enables you to actually choose the right solution for you. And that's something that's based on the vendor's marketing slogan. And then lastly, I think it's very nice to start with a minimum viable product here. So don't just try to track everything at the same time and to activate everything at the same time. Unless you have limitless resources, it will never actually work. So please make sure to actually think of it as an MVP. Identify your business requirements, then try to set it up, say step by step, but so that every step will deliver extra business value. Because otherwise, once again, it might be very easy to get stuck into the in this whole organizational political mess, which is, let's say, a major killer of any data related product, I think. So if you check all those 4 points, then what kind of potential choices do we have? So I think that if you come from the digital analytics background and then you want to move into marketing data integration and activation, so you let's say similarly to myself, used to be a digital analyst, but then you kind of moved into data activation. Then Tedium might be a good choice because that's also where they are coming from. So they have like the proper TMS setup. They have quite a proper consent management setup and this privacy enforcement layer, etc. And then they kind of have a very similar logic behind everything, like you would have with a digital analytics tool. Then, if you are focused on getting something that your data analysts and front-end developers will love, then Segment might be potentially the good way. Segment has a very neat client-side API. So basically, they have like a JavaScript library that you can implement very easily. And then So it kind of acts like a TMS, but without all the mapping capabilities you would have from a tag management system. And then segment is more focused on working with techie people. So if you want to do something nice, then you will probably need to know SQL, etc., etc. So I would recommend it if you already have like quite a robust data and IT teams and you want them to work together. Then segment might be a good way. Then if you are focused on mobile, so if you are a mobile gaming company, or if the majority of your e-commerce traffic is coming from mobile, then it might be interesting for you to look at mParticle. mParticle is, let's say, a mobile first platform. So as opposed to Tedium and Segment, that they come from where they come from the web setup, mParticle came from the mobile. So they get all the mobile advertising catches quite well. So they track all of those mobile IDs by default, and it's quite easy to work with that. And then they also have quite a nice integration with social advertising platform, etc. So if you are this kind of hippie mobile first company, then getting mParticle might be a good idea for you. And then finally, if data collection is a major part of your business strategy, so if you rely on on data a lot and you don't only treat it as an afterthought, then building something equivalent to a CDP by yourself is getting easier every day. So every day, the three major cloud providers like Google Cloud, AWS, Azure, etc., also multitude of others are implementing new solutions that make it easier for us, let's say, half technical people or not so technical people, to actually build something by ourselves without having to have a computer science degree there. And I think that if you want to go that way, it's quite easy now, especially with everything happening with GA4 and server-side Google Tag Manager tagging, etc., etc. Everything is kind of moving into this DIY CDP phase. So if you can justify the expense on the resources that you will need to spend that way, then it might actually be quite a good solution. So I think that I just ran through this presentation very quickly, and now we've got plenty of time for Q&A. So I don't see if there actually were any questions, but if they were, we can go to them.
Yep, thank you so much. So we do have a couple questions. So if anyone out there has questions, please use the Zoom Q&A and we'll start digging into them. So the first question that we got was on the slide where you showed, the last slide you had where you showed a couple of the vendor options. Lucas had said, you mentioned Lytics earlier. Can you say a couple things of your impressions of it and why was Lytics not on this slide? And as you answer that, I also was going to mention, I think you had mentioned Adobe has their new Adobe Experience platform, and I wondered if you have seen that or if you had any comments of where that fits in with this diagram.
That's a very good point. I mean, both of the questions are. So starting with Lytics, I think that Lytics actually, if we go back to the slide, to this slide, I think that Lytics is somewhere in between the Smart Hub and Marketing Data Integration CDP. So they have quite a lot of data activation solutions from what I remember. I haven't actually worked with it myself, but I've been doing some extra research on that. And because of the fact that, to be honest, I have never used this kind of Smart Hub CDP, then I didn't want to, I didn't want to go through that. I also think that if you are looking into a CDP, you are most likely to already have a marketing automation tool like Mailchimp, or I don't know, or Active Campaign, or Campaign Monitor, or something like that. And in this case, if you get a CDP like that, then you will just not use its full potential. So that's why I decided to focus on those marketing data integration CDPs, because I believe that that's something that fits the most companies' needs these days. But of course, if you are like a cool e-commerce startup that's looking for like one solution fits all kind of thing, then getting something more into the smart hub direction might actually make sense. So, so in that case, that's something that I would absolutely recommend looking into. And going into the Adobe Experience Platform question, I have not worked with it myself yet, but I've been following Adobe, let's say, what Adobe was doing over the last couple of years quite closely. And I believe that what they want to achieve is very impressive. And I think that that's something that will be super cool for any Adobe user. But as we know from the past, some integrations between different Adobe solutions were not as let's say nice as they could be. So I think that if Adobe solves that with the Experience Platform, then it will be awesome. And it's something that I'm also really looking into, really looking for at the moment.
Okay, cool. Okay, next question. Are some CDPs better for building advanced segments than others? What would you recommend for companies that want to identify and market to prospects based on, for example, their propensity to buy or churn?
Okay, so basically, I think most of these CDPs actually allow you to export your audience into some kind of external data pipeline. So if we look at this site here, we have those audience-based connectors, and from what I understand, we are talking about a case where the audience attribution logic within the CDP might not be, say, advanced enough, and we want to process it somewhere else. Because basically, from my experience, in quite a lot of cases, those audience building conditions inside a CDP are quite basic. So I think that for churn and customer lifetime value, etc., you should be fine with majority of CDPs out of the box. So, for example, with Tedium and Segment, and Particle as well, I think from the ones that we have discussed. But for any kind of more advanced data pipeline, you might want to export it somewhere and then import it in your CDP again. So this is something that's actually totally possible. And for example, then you can join the data with your other tables. You can run some custom processing with Spark, for example, or you can just have whatever data operations you want on that, and then import them again into the CDP. And I think that this should also be supported by majority of them. But if you just have a couple of data analysts that are quite fluent with SQL, and they like working with SQL the most, then I think that Segment is actually the most oriented there. So from what I remember, you can totally build segment personas with SQL. So this could actually be the good solution then, if you think. But that's with the main assumption that you have most of your data inside the CDP anyways, and you don't need to join it with external tables, etc., etc. That's what would complicate that.
Okay, well, now we have tons of questions coming in, so we might have to do quick
Haha.
answers. Um, in the new age of privacy first marketing, it would seem that a CDP would be the way for businesses to address first party data management. Do you see that privacy requirements will accelerate the adoption of CDP solutions?
Um, I think that it kind of are two questions combined into one. Because first of all, when we talk about CDPs, we can be also still talking about client-side tracking, and then with client-side tracking, then we have all those cookies, etc., to think of, and all the kind of privacy management solution that we are thinking of. But then we also have everything that's happening on the server side and so on. And I think that CDP can help with both of those things, but it kind of depends on which CDP you select, because some of them, like Tedium, are more privacy oriented, and some of them might be a little bit less privacy oriented. So I think it kind of depends on what you exactly expect. So do you expect to be able to remove data from the CDP based on the user request, or do you want to break the opt-in settings into different categories, etc., etc.? Because that is something that the CDP should be able to provide. But on the other hand, if your organization has data privacy and data access issues in the first place, then a CDP will not solve that, of course.
Okay, so I've got a fun question here from Paul. As you observe the marketing tech landscape, which you showed like the chief MarTech islands metaphor, how would you describe the role of CDP in this landscape? Is it another island? Is it a bridge? Is it a boat?
I think they are aiming to be a bridge here. And to be a bridge that goes into multiple directions at the same time, probably. But it's also very important to not get caught in the trap of just building something that's impossible to build. So ideally, yes, a CDP could be a solution to where you integrate your Aztec solutions, your marketing automation solutions, your digital analytics solutions, etc., in the one place. But of course, when you try to overbuild it, it can all lead to the dark side of those data projects, and I think that can be quite a big mistake.
Okay. Next question. Have you found a tool that does real-time visitor stitching for event connectors as well?
I think it kind of depends on how real time are we talking. I think that if we are talking about a couple of seconds of delay, then I think there are some let's say smarter people than myself in the audience here. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that Tedium actually should be able to provide it if you set up a visitor ID. If you set up visitor ID right, and if you are talking about a couple of seconds of the delay in the real time. If we are talking about less than that, then it might be quite hard to have an external service for that. And in this case, I would, if you need, like, for example, 100 milliseconds of delay or so, then probably building your own infrastructure for that is a better choice.
Okay. Next question. Can you please talk about the approximate costs or budget that you should plan for if you're looking to go down this CDP route?
That's also a very good question, and I think that unfortunately that depends quite a lot. Basically, it depends on which type of CDPs are you looking at, and also at how much data you want to proceed there. But I think that for the mid-sized companies, it would be kind of similar to a G860 or Adobe Analytics ballpark price. So around 100 to 200,000 USD per year, probably.
Okay, next, we had actually one of our attendees, Benjamin, say we're using both helium and M particle, and have found that they're quite different when it comes to both tag managers and CDPs. Telium is much more robust as a tag manager, where nParticle had more CDP capabilities. Just kind of curious if other people found the same thing.
Yes, I totally agree with that, and it's also a very important point to make when making your decision, right? So how much you want to focus on event streams, how much you want to focus on audience synchronization. If you want to focus on audience synchronization, how often do you need those audiences to be refreshed? And then what kind of delay do you allow it to be there? And and how many of those audiences you want to get, and how many connectors you want to have, etc., etc. So that's exactly what I meant when checking vendors, because I think that both Telium and nParticle will very often tell you that they do both of the things. But if you go into the details, you will see that they can be quite different. Exactly. So in these terms, yes, as I said, it's very important to define your business requirements first and then see which CDP works better for those and not the other way.
Yeah, we had Pavlin said, we recently experimented with Segment. It worked quite well for a collection of clickstream data and pushing those to Adobe Analytics as server side. However, we saw some limitations with tracking of custom events. We had to add some custom code to the page. Do you have any experience leveraging Segment as a complete replacement for Adobe, or I guess as well, Google Analytics on the client side?
Probably that's something that I would not really recommend in many cases, because it should basically be able to receive what you send to it, but it will never be a proper digital analytics tool with a visits aggregation, with visitor aggregation, with all those kind of nice reporting capabilities, etc., etc. And honestly, if you just want to have your own kind of web analytics tool, then going with something like Snowplow with a defined data model or so might actually make much more sense than using Segment for that. So I would say that Segment can potentially be a replacement for that if you really want to have your own definitions of what a session means or what a user means, etc., etc. Because then when you are able to define that on your data warehouses and using your clickstream data, then you should be able to do that. But otherwise, if you just want to look at your numbers and have fun with them, it's probably not the best case.
Yeah, and I think Lucas actually just clarified something. I think what the question was getting at is replacing the client-side implementation of Adobe Analytics, not the actual, not actually replacing Adobe Analytics.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I have went into another direction here, but I think that in general, yes, but I'm not exactly sure about Segment's capabilities, to be honest, in that thing, because I have done some kind of basic Segment setup based back in the days, but I have frankly mostly worked with Telium in those cases, and very often it is like that. For example, you are not able to map one parameter that you need for Adobe the way that Adobe wants it in. And then it requires a lot of, let's say, going back and forth with the vendor, trying to actually go into the API documentation, try to do some processing of the data in the first place, etc., which can be quite a mess. I think that, having said that, I think that Telium has done quite a long way before, and actually for Adobe Analytics setup, I think that you can base them on Telium, but with Segment, I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, it's funny. Segment, I've used it quite a bit, and what's interesting is the interface is so easy to use, but I find that it doesn't always have the enterprise capabilities that you're looking for. And I think in many cases, Segment was, I don't know this for a fact, but the sense I get is it was originally more of like an SMB But then I think
Mhm.
enterprises found it so easy to use that they started using it. But then when you get into some more robust scenarios, it doesn't give you as much capabilities as, like a Telium.
Absolutely, I totally agree, and I also think that the segment is kind of making it quite complicated to understand everything they have in terms of integration capabilities with those cloud and device modes. Because when they say that they have a device mode integration, that means that they are basically acting as like a tag manager, and it's not a real, let's say, integration that you would expect from the server side focused CDP. So to just add to what you have said, Adam, I I think that also can be a kind of the downside when looking at segment.
Yeah, and Lucas actually just sent me a note. He did confirm that you can use Telium's event stream connector to do server-side data collection for Adobe Analytics, which is cool.
Nice, thanks, Lucas. I knew that I can count on you here. So
okay, so we've time for maybe one or two more quick questions. Jeff asked, which CDP has the best ID unification or customer stitching? I think you mentioned this a little bit, but anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, so basically, if we are talking about deterministic user identification, I think that all of them are kind of on the same level, with maybe a small asterisk that mParticle might be a little bit better on the mobile side, but I think that on web, basically everything is handled quite similarly. But if you are talking about probabilistic determination, then I have not yet seen a CDP that actually does that. So you might then want to look into another direction and try to integrate the data from this other data source into the CDP.
Okay, one last question. When considering an approach of using an existing CDP versus a do-it-yourself approach, whether it be an internal data warehouse or Google, Amazon, Snowplow, what would be the biggest challenges to face in the do-it-yourself approach? For example, what CDP functionality is the hardest to replicate?
I would say it's this kind of real-time user profile verification, if you will, because let's say just collecting events and then pushing them into another API is quite simple. I mean, it of course depends on how many APIs do you have to maintain yourself, but it's not that big of a thing anymore. I think that when we are talking about this kind of real-time user profile updating, that's the most difficult part, and that's something that for example, to do it with all those kind of near real-time values, etc., you have to invest quite a lot into infrastructure and a proper setup behind that.
Okay, awesome. Okay, well, we are at our time. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. And you guys had awesome questions today. Seems like there's a lot of interest in the CDP area. And thank you so much, Maciek, for presenting. This was awesome. The recording of the session will be available in the Slack group,
Awesome.
hopefully later today. And if you have any other questions, you can reach out to us, or I see contact information has been added to the screen. Awesome. So thank you so much for presenting today.
Exactly. Thank you, everyone. And I'm on SDEC Slack as well. So if you have any questions, you can just go ahead and ask them there. So thanks, everyone, and have a nice day ahead.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.